Mali says that France was supplying these terrorists with equipment and with intelligence and with logistical support. And they said, we have evidence, but the UN Security Council has never given them a platform to provide that evidence. I believe what Mali is saying, and you see in this scenario, they are simply using the terrorists to ensure that eventually Mali can fall back into the hands of leaders who are friendly to the West, so that Mali can fall back into the orbit of the West. For that reason, that is how these terrorists were able, JNIM terrorists.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how they were able to go into the most guarded part of Mali. Not only that, but to target and get the defense minister himself. They could not do that if they were just operating on their own. They needed intelligence.
Now Mali.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The defense minister,
Yeah.
he was killed in a terror attack.
Yeah.
One thing I want to know about this terror attacks that are happening in the Sahel. Is it true that the West is behind these attacks, and why?
Yeah, a great question. And there is no simple answer to that. There's a multiplicity of factors. But let me start by unequivocally saying that, yes, the West plays a role. It's not the only role, but they play a role, as was evidenced by Mali itself a couple of years back when they wrote to the UN Security Council and made it clear that they had evidence that France was supporting the Tuareg separatists in northern Mali. Historically, they want to carve out northern Mali to be its own separate country. And that on its own has nothing to do with the West. It's just that the West is very good in taking advantage of local grievances. And then you have the terrorists that are affiliated with Al-Qaeda, sometimes referred to as jihadists. I know there are a lot of fellow Pan-African brothers and sisters who now completely frown on the term jihadist because they say that that is painting the entire Islam in wrong picture. So let's just call them terrorists because that's what they are. Many of them started out on their own. Like they didn't sit with Macron and say, can we start a terrorism movement? You know, it was a purely hardcore terrorism. But the West has historically taken advantage of all such factors. Look at Syria. Syria, the guy who is president now was initially a leader of an Al-Qaeda terrorist group. Now he has the support of the West.
Yes.
You see? So people should understand that there is the direct role that a country like France is playing, and they blocked Mali from tabling the evidence at the Security Council because Mali says that France was supplying these terrorists with equipment and with intelligence and with logistical support. And they said, we have evidence, but the UN Security Council has never given them a platform to provide that evidence. I believe what Mali is saying. However, we must now amplify the call for this evidence being tabled, because unless and until it is tabled, we are still a minority of Africans and people in the world who know and believe that France is in fact supporting the terrorists. To what end though? Because of that long-term agenda that I told you. The imperialist always treats any defeat as a temporary setback. We should never ever forget that. They treat every defeat as a temporary setback. They quickly regroup and quickly ask themselves, what do we do practically to regain that ground?
Okay.
And you see in this scenario, they are simply using the terrorists to ensure that eventually Mali can fall back into the hands of leaders who are friendly to the West, so that Mali can fall back into the orbit of the West. For that reason, that is how these terrorists were able, JNIM terrorists.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how they were able to go into the most guarded part of Mali. Not only that, but to target and get the defense minister himself. They could not do that if they were just operating on their own. They needed intelligence. Intelligence is a critical part of any warfare. In fact, Africa has to raise its intelligence game a lot. We have to. Yeah. So that's what happened there. It is, however, not an end in itself. France and other imperialists supporting these terrorists or the separatists are just using them. When they are back in power properly, when they have a friendly leader, they always now fight them again.
Oh.
But that's part of the long game. So it is critical for the Pan-African. And, I'm going to keep saying this. We have to play an even longer game so that we answer the question, if they are now really empowering these people, what do we do to ensure that the defenses of Assimi Goïta and his army are proper? But even beyond them, because it's about the systems, even beyond Assimi Goïta, how can Mali, how can Burkina Faso, how can Niger, how can they be extremely strong? Remember, Mali is at the moment really, really reliant on the Afrika Corps, the Russian paramilitary that is under the Russian army that took over from the Wagner group.
Yes.
So I understand that for now Mali has to rely on them.
Yeah.
But playing the long game means we've got to look beyond the Afrika Corps because it's not helpful to outsource national security for the long term.
So are you trying to say we need to have a one African army?
Yep, I've always called for that. I understand that the puppets, the imperialist puppets who sometimes go by the name of our presidents, I understand that they will fight that tooth and nail because they understand that a strong African army basically impedes their power. Remember, I told you that when you have your strong army anywhere, you're able to secure your interests militarily. So in my book, one of the best ways of securing the interests of the African people is by having an African army. So that when Yoweri Museveni has been around for 41 years and his son is the head of the military, when Samia Suluhu is killing innocent Tanzanians, when all these presidents are using extrajudicial killings to silence critics and the populace, if there's an all-African army that has clear marching orders, that they only exist to secure the interests of the African people. So can we do much more to elaborately answer the question of what can be done so that even if it is 50 years from now, even if it is 30 years from now, what should start happening now? And do we need to go through a stage where we have Africa's answer to NATO, first of all? NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty, that is now considerably weak, but remains the largest, most powerful military force in the world. Do we want to start with that so that it is not just a monolithic single African army, but a very clear alliance, that has said that an attack on one African country is an attack for all African countries. But what should happen now? Maybe legislation. Maybe we'll say that we need referendum. So we are like, okay, Duma Boko looks like a great guy. So can we begin lobbying him for Botswana to be the first African country to vote on a referendum calling for Africa's answer to NATO? See, that will be a small step, but towards the right direction. Yeah.
Wow. And is there hope? Is there hope as it is right now with Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger having this terrorism problem, even northern Nigeria as well, but we know Trump is already there as well. Is there hope that this terrorism will end as it is right now without this African army?
Yeah, there's hope because a critical part of the solution is a political solution. In fact, some of these challenges cannot be solved purely on the battlefield. We need political solutions to some of them. The problem though is that when you have politicians who are life members of the corrupt ruling elite, they cannot execute political solutions. So there's hope, and my direct challenge is, if you know you're a Kenyan, if you know you're a Nigerian, I mentioned those two countries because they have elections next year.
Yes.
And they are very, strong geopolitical powers. But every African country that has elections in the next 1 year, you begin to give a lot of life to this hope by electing presidents who will truly execute the political solutions that are needed. Because when you have the likes of Ruto and Tinubu, their only political, their version of a political solution is to get into bed with France, with America, and with these people. But if you end up with presidents who now realize that a political solution to the northern Nigerian problem will entail ABCD in the short term and in the midterm, and they are not subservient to the military-industrial complex, then that is where it begins. So we challenge people, could you look at the third-party candidates? Could you look at transformative leaders, both at the national presidential level, but also at the parliamentary level, because that's where the laws are made. Alors, merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you very much, everybody. We are Africa, and we, the people of Africa, are the most powerful force on earth. But only when we come together, only when we awaken, only when we unite. When we keep awakening and when we keep uniting, then we can truly transform Africa. So it is always my great joy to join my brother Orina, because I truly, truly believe that at the heart of this greatest force on earth are the young people of Africa. Because there is this young people of Africa who must now really take the reins of leadership. They cannot afford to say, if you are in your 20s, you are a teenager, you are in your 30s and you're African, please understand one thing, that Africa is counting on you, not your president, but on you, to be the one to ensure that there's lasting transformation in your country. Africa is counting on you, as a young person here in Africa, to think differently, to decolonize your mind, so that you stop looking at yourself as just Nigerian and then African. You begin looking at yourself as African and then Nigerian, whichever country you come from. Because when you do that, then it becomes possible to ensure that the African economy is truly working for Africans. It becomes possible to ensure that when there's war in Sudan, you don't feel that I'm far away in Zambia, it doesn't concern me. You realize that if Sudan is bleeding, then Zambia is bleeding. And when Sudan rises up, it means that there's even more opportunity for Zambia, for Zimbabwe, for Ghana, for Central African Republic. Because Africa is one continent. And Africa must now ensure that we work together. And a challenge that I want to throw at everybody, now the Pan-Afrikanists, if you consider yourself to be a hardcore Pan-Africanist, understand one thing. For every solution that you provide online, you must put in twice as much effort, thrice as much effort towards implementing that solution offline, towards leveraging this online space to ensure that in the society, away from the online platforms, you are also playing a critical role in ensuring that there's a solution. Because we cannot risk being in a situation where we rightfully point out what is going wrong with Africa and what should be done, but we're not putting as much effort in actually executing that. So it is so critical for all of us to do that and to continue supporting each other as we do that, even when we occasionally disagree on the tactical approaches. But I believe Africa is rising up, and nobody can stop the Pan-African sun from rising.